There is a threshold state, a narrow band of consciousness between waking and sleep, that every human being passes through twice a day and almost no one learns to use deliberately. Neville Goddard called it the state akin to sleep, and he insisted that it was the single most powerful moment in your 24-hour cycle for impressing the subconscious mind with a desired fact. Lucid dreamers call it the hypnagogic zone, and they have spent decades developing techniques to enter it consciously, to stabilize awareness within it, and to use it as a doorway into the dream world itself. What if these two traditions, one rooted in mystical Christianity and the imagination, the other in psychology and sleep science, have been describing the exact same doorway? And what if learning to walk through it deliberately could change everything? Welcome to Neville Goddard Universe, where we explore the teachings of Neville Goddard, not as a closed system, but as a living stream of truth that flows through many channels. I'm your guide, and in this episode we're going to do something unusual. We're going to take Neville's most practical, most repeatable technique, SATS, the state akin to sleep, and map it directly onto the language and methods of lucid dreaming. Not as metaphor, not as loose analogy, but as two traditions that have independently discovered the same neurological, psychological, and metaphysical threshold and learned to use it for transformation. You clicked on this episode because someone, somewhere, said they used lucid dreaming to manifest something real, and you want to know how. You want to know if the hypnagogic state, that flickering, liminal consciousness you touch every night, really is the secret Neville kept pointing to. By the end of this episode, you'll understand not only how these two systems converge, but how to use that convergence practically, tonight, as you fall asleep. And if this exploration speaks to you, if it helps you see the deeper unity beneath these different languages, a like or a subscription keeps this work alive. I'm grateful for every mind that walks this path with us. Let's begin where Neville always began, with consciousness itself. Neville Goddard was not a theorist. He was a practitioner. And if you had to distill his entire teaching into a single, repeatable practice that anyone could test tonight, it would be this: the use of the state akin to sleep to impress the subconscious mind with the feeling of the wish fulfilled. He describes it most clearly in his 1944 book, Feeling is the Secret. The technique is devastatingly simple. As you lie in bed at night, you induce a state of drowsiness, not quite asleep, but no longer fully awake. Your body is relaxed. Your mind is still aware, but loose, unfocused, drifting. In that state, you construct a brief, simple scene that would naturally occur after your wish has been fulfilled. Not the wish itself, not the process of getting it, but the evidence of its completion. You loop that scene, you feel it. You fall asleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Neville tells you this is not visualization in the ordinary sense. It is not daydreaming. It is not hoping. It is assuming. And the assumption, when done in this particular state, when done with feeling, impresses itself upon your subconscious mind as fact. The subconscious does not argue. It does not evaluate truth. It accepts what is felt as real, and then it begins to externalize that inner state as outer circumstance. The world, Neville insists, is yourself pushed out. Let me ground this in a concrete example, the kind Neville loved to share. Imagine a woman who desires a specific job. She does not imagine the interview. She does not imagine the application process. She imagines herself at home, weeks later, sitting at her kitchen table, holding a paycheck from that company. She feels the texture of the paper. She sees her name printed on it. She feels the quiet satisfaction of knowing it's done. She rehearses this scene as she falls asleep, night after night, until the feeling becomes natural. And then, without forcing, without manipulation, the outer world begins to rearrange itself to match the inner conviction. Neville would say, the state you fall asleep in is the state you are planting in the subconscious. Sleep is the door. The hypnagogic threshold is the planting season, and feeling is the seed. Now, here's what most people miss. Neville did not say, relax and hope. He did not say, Think positive thoughts as you drift off. He was extraordinarily specific about the state you must enter. He used the phrase, state, akin to sleep, over and over again, and he meant something precise by it. You are not fully awake, because the critical, doubting, surface mind is too active. You are not fully asleep, because you need just enough awareness to direct the scene. You are in between. You are in the twilight. In his 1950s lectures, Neville would describe this state in sensory terms. Your body feels heavy, immobilized, as if sinking into the mattress. Your breathing has slowed. You are no longer thinking in sharp, linear thoughts. You are drifting in images, in feelings, in half-formed impressions. If someone were monitoring your brain, they would see alpha waves giving way to theta. You are entering the hypnagogic zone. And this is where Neville's teaching becomes not just mystical, but neurologically precise. Because what he discovered through practice, sleep science has now confirmed through measurement. The hypnagogic state is a liminal consciousness where the boundary between voluntary and involuntary mental activity becomes porous. The subconscious is more receptive. The critical faculty is offline. Suggestion bypasses resistance. And imaginal acts, performed in this state, register with unusual depth. Neville called this sleeping in the wish fulfilled. He insisted you could not do it once and expect results. You had to persist. You had to return to the scene night after night, until it felt natural, until it felt true, until you could no longer tell the difference between the imagined state and a memory. And then, he said, the world would conform, not because you forced it, but because assumption, when felt deeply enough, becomes fact. The question is, how do you stabilize that state? How do you stay conscious in the drowsy drift long enough to direct it? How do you avoid simply falling asleep before the scene has been properly impressed? This is where lucid dreaming comes in. Lucid dreaming is the practice of becoming conscious within a dream while the dream is still happening. And for decades, lucid dreamers have been developing techniques to enter that state deliberately. Two of the most well-known are called WILD and MILD, wake-initiated lucid dream, and mnemonic-initiated lucid dream. And both of them train you to do the exact thing Neville was asking you to do, maintain a thread of awareness as you pass through the hypnagogic threshold. Let's start with WILD, because it maps most directly onto Neville's technique. In WILD, you lie down as if to sleep. You relax your body completely, limb by limb, breath by breath, until you feel the familiar heaviness of approaching sleep. But instead of letting awareness dissolve, you hold a thin thread of attention. You might focus on your breath. You might count. You might repeat a simple phrase. The goal is not to stay alert in the ordinary sense. That would keep you awake. The goal is to let your body fall asleep while your mind stays gently aware. As you drift deeper, you begin to experience hypnagogic phenomena. Flashes of color, random images, voices, a sudden jolt as if you're falling. These are signs that you are crossing the threshold. In the lucid dreaming tradition, these phenomena are not distractions. They are signals. They tell you that you are entering the state where conscious intention can interact directly with the subconscious mind. And here is the key. In this state, you can direct the imagery. You can choose the scene. You can decide what appears in your mind's eye. And because the critical mind is offline, the scene does not feel like pretending. It feels real. It feels present. It feels like memory. Does this sound familiar? Neville was teaching WILD without calling it that. When he said, "Enter the state akin to sleep and construct your scene," he was instructing you to use the hypnagogic threshold the way a lucid dreamer uses it, as a doorway between waking intention and subconscious impression. The only difference is this: the lucid dreamer uses the doorway to enter a dream they can explore. Neville uses the doorway to plant a scene they want to externalize. Now let's talk about MILD, because it introduces something Neville also emphasized: the power of intention set before sleep. In MILD, you do not try to stay aware as you fall asleep. Instead, as you lie in bed, you repeat a phrase over and over, Tonight I will recognize I am dreaming. Tonight I will become lucid. You pair the phrase with a brief visualization of yourself realizing you're in a dream. You set the intention. You release it. You fall asleep naturally. And the intention, planted in the hypnagogic zone, works beneath the surface and often triggers lucidity later in the night. Neville did this too. He would often tell students, loop the scene, feel it, and then release it. Let sleep take you. Do not strain. Do not force. The work is done in the planting. The harvest comes later, often in ways you cannot predict. What I want you to see is this. Lucid dreaming and Neville's SATS are not two separate practices. They are two maps of the same territory. The lucid dreamer wants to become conscious in the dream. Neville wants to make the dream conscious in waking life. But both are using the hypnagogic state as the hinge between imagination and reality, between intention and manifestation, between the inner and the outer. In the lucid dreaming community, there is a principle. What you rehearse in the hypnagogic state becomes more likely to appear in the dream. If you visualize a door before sleep, you are more likely to encounter a door in your dream. If you practice recognizing dream signs in the twilight state, you are more likely to recognize them when you are fully asleep. The subconscious, they have discovered, is programmable through hypnagogic repetition. Neville discovered the same thing, but he extended the principle. He said, what you rehearse in the hypnagogic state becomes more likely to appear in waking life. The subconscious does not distinguish between inner and outer. It only knows what is felt as real. And when you feel something as real in the state akin to sleep, the subconscious begins to organize your outer world to reflect that inner conviction. The Kybalion, that ancient Hermetic text, says, as above, so below, as within, so without. Neville would say, the inner is the cause, the outer is the effect. The lucid dreamer would say, the hypnagogic state is the bridge between conscious will and subconscious creation. And all three are saying the same thing. So when someone tells you, I used lucid dreaming to manifest this, what they are really saying is, I learned to stabilize my awareness in the hypnagogic zone. I learned to direct the imagery. I learned to plant the scene with feeling, and the world conformed. They may not call it SATS. They may not quote Neville, but they are using the same doorway. And the beautiful thing is this, the techniques are compatible. If you struggle to stay aware in SATS, you can borrow wild techniques to stabilize your attention. If you struggle to construct a vivid scene, you can borrow MILD techniques to set the intention before sleep. The two traditions support each other. They teach the same threshold from different angles. Neville said it best in Feeling. Is the secrets. The subconscious is the womb of creation. It receives impressions without question and gives them form in the outer world. The conscious mind is the gardener who chooses the seeds. The hypnagogic state is the moment of planting. Lucid dreamers have mapped that moment with scientific precision. Neville used it with mystical certainty. And now you have both maps. You can walk through the doorway with your eyes open. Let me walk you through this practice as if you were going to use it tonight. This is SATS enriched with lucid dreaming techniques, a hybrid method that honors both traditions and makes the threshold easier to reach, easier to hold, and easier to use. First, choose your scene. This is Neville's foundation, and it does not change. The scene must be simple, short, and imply the fulfillment of your desire, not the desire itself, not the journey toward it, the evidence of its completion. If you want a new home, imagine yourself holding the keys. If you want reconciliation, imagine the embrace. If you want creative success, imagine reading a review of your work. The scene should take no more than 5 to 10 seconds to loop. It should involve at least one other person, if possible, because that adds sensory richness. And it should feel natural, something you would actually do if the wish were fulfilled. Second, prepare your body for the hypnagogic state. Lie down in bed as if you are going to sleep. This is not a meditation in a chair. You want your body to believe it is bedtime, because that triggers the neurological shift toward theta waves. Close your eyes. Relax each part of your body in sequence: feet, legs, hands, arms, chest, face. Some lucid dreamers use a body scan. Some use progressive muscle relaxation. The method does not matter. The goal is the same: signal to your nervous system that it is safe to drift. Third, let your breathing slow and deepen naturally. Do not force it, just notice it. Some people find it helpful to count breaths. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 6. This activates the parasympathetic nervous system and accelerates the transition into the hypnagogic zone. As you do this, you will begin to feel a heaviness, a sinking sensation. Your thoughts will become less linear. You may see flashes of color or random images. These are hypnagogic hallucinations, and they are good signs. They mean you are crossing the threshold. Fourth, as you drift, gently bring your scene to mind. Do not strain. Do not visualize with effort. Let the scene emerge as if you are remembering it. See it from your own eyes, not as an outside observer. Feel your hands in the scene. Hear the sounds. Notice the temperature of the air. If the scene involves someone speaking, hear their voice. If it involves touch, feel the texture. The more sensory detail you include, the more real it will feel, and feeling is the secret. Fifth, loop the scene. Play it once, let it dissolve. Play it again. Each time, let it feel a little more natural, a little more familiar. This is where lucid dreamers' loop technique becomes useful. In lucid dreaming, repetition stabilizes the dream. In SATS, repetition impresses the subconscious. Do not worry if the scene changes slightly each time. Do not worry if your mind wanders. When it does, gently return to the scene. The key is the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not the perfection of the image. Sixth, if you find yourself slipping too quickly into unconscious sleep, borrow from Wild D. Keep a thin thread of awareness on a single anchor, your breath, a phrase, a point of light. Do not try to stay fully alert. Just keep a gentle, soft awareness, like holding a thread without pulling it. This will help you stay in the hypnagogic zone longer without waking yourself up. Seventh, as you feel yourself drifting into true sleep, let the scene go. Release it. Trust that it has been planted. Fall asleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not in the effort of holding it. Neville was clear. The work is done in the impression, not in the maintenance. Once the seed is planted, sleep waters it. And here is the discipline. Do this every night. Not once, not when you remember, every night. Neville said, persistence is the key. The subconscious learns through repetition. The first night, the scene may feel forced. The second night, less so. By the 7th night, it will feel natural. By the 14th, it will feel like memory. And when it feels like memory, it is already done in consciousness. The outer world will follow. If you want to deepen the practice, you can add a milled-style intention. Before you begin the scene, repeat to yourself, tonight, as I fall asleep, I will feel my wish fulfilled. I will accept it as true. This primes the subconscious, the way MILD primes you for lucidity. It sets the frame. And if you want to test the threshold itself, keep a journal by your bed. When you wake in the morning, write down any dreams, any fragments, any images that appeared during the night. Over time, you will start to notice that the scene you rehearsed in SATS begins to bleed into your dreams, and your dreams begin to reflect the assumption you are impressing. This is not failure. This is confirmation. It means the subconscious is accepting the new state. Neville said, dare to assume the wish fulfilled and observe its fulfillment. The hypnagogic state is where you assume it. The waking world is where you observe it. And lucid dreaming techniques simply help you hold the threshold steady while you plant the assumption with feeling. This is not magic in the superstitious sense. This is consciousness using its own mechanics deliberately. And it works. Let's step back and ask, Why does it matter that Neville's SATS and lucid dreaming techniques describe the same threshold? It matters because it suggests something profound about the nature of consciousness. Neville was a mystic who read the Bible as psychology. Lucid dreamers are researchers who mapped the sleep cycle with science. And yet, independently, they both arrived at the same conclusion. There is a liminal state between waking and sleeping where the boundary between imagination and reality becomes thin, and in that state, conscious intention can shape subconscious creation. This is not coincidence. This is convergence. And when multiple traditions, separated by method and vocabulary, converge on the same truth, it tells us we are looking at something real, something structural, something that exists not because a teacher said it, but because consciousness itself works this way. In Vedanta, they speak of the three states of consciousness, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. But they also speak of a fourth state, called Turiya, which underlies and witnesses all three. The hypnagogic zone is not Turiya, but it is a threshold where the witness becomes active. You are no longer entirely identified with the waking mind, but you have not yet dissolved into unconsciousness. You are aware of awareness itself, and in that awareness you can choose what to impress. In Hermetic philosophy, the principle of mentalism says, "The all is mind. The universe is mental," Neville would say. "Consciousness is the only reality." Lucid dreamers would say, "The dream is as real as waking life while you are in it, because both are states of consciousness." And all three are pointing to the same insight. Reality is not fixed, it is fluid, and it responds to the state of the observer. Quantum theory hints at this with the observer effect. The act of observation collapses the wave function. The state of the observer determines what is observed. Neville taught this without the equations. Assumption determines experience. The lucid dreamer proves it every night. When you become conscious in the dream responds to your intention. You can fly. You can walk through walls. You can call forth people and places with a thought. Why? Because in the dream you know it is consciousness. You have no doubt. And so it obeys. The question Neville always asked is, why do we forget this when we wake up? Why do we treat waking life as fixed, solid, and independent of consciousness, when every night we prove that consciousness creates reality? And the answer is, because waking life has trained us in doubt. But the hypnagogic state exists before doubt. It exists before the critical mind has woken up to argue. And that is why it is so powerful. That is why Neville insisted you use it. That is why lucid dreamers study it. What the convergence tells us is this: the mechanics are universal, the threshold is real, and every human being passes through it twice a day. Most people waste it. Some people use it unconsciously. But once you know what it is, once you learn to stabilize your awareness within it, you can use it deliberately. You can plant assumptions. You can impress the subconscious. You can shape the dream of waking life the way a lucid dreamer shapes the dream of sleep. This is not wishful thinking. This is applied consciousness. And it works for the same reason gravity works, because it is part of the structure of reality itself. Neville once said, "You are already that which you seek. You need only assume you are, and you will see it reflected in your world." The hypnagogic state is the bridge between assumption and reflection, and now you know how to cross it. You came here because someone said they used lucid dreaming to manifest something real, and you wanted to know if it was true. Now you know, it is not just true. It is the same truth Neville taught. The hypnagogic state is the doorway. SATS is the key. Lucid dreaming techniques are the training wheels that help you stay balanced as you learn to ride. If this exploration has resonated with you, if it has shown you the deeper unity beneath these different languages, a like or a subscription keeps this work alive, and I am truly grateful for every mind that walks this path with us. Tonight, as you lie in bed, you will pass through the threshold whether you intend to or not. The question is whether you will use it, whether you will choose your scene, whether you will feel the wish fulfilled. whether you will let sleep take you in the assumption of your desire already done. That is the only question that matters. And you already know the answer. The world is not something that happens to you. It is something that happens through you. And the hypnagogic state is the moment when you remember that. When the veil thins. When imagination and reality are not two things, but one thing, seen from different sides. Neville said, "Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and observe its fulfillment." The lucid dreamer says, "Recognize you are dreaming, and the dream will obey you." And both are saying, consciousness is the only reality. The threshold is the proof, and tonight you can walk through it, sleep well, dream deliberately, and wake to the world you imagined.